Sea levels will rise due to rapid climate change in the near future, and people will decide to colonize space. They spend decades moving the majority of the population, thereafter constructing shelters between Earth and the Moon's orbital planes. Shelters 8, 12, and 13 declare themselves the Adrian Republic and start attacking the other shelters after humanity has calmed down, beginning a protracted war with the Allied force. The only humans now living on Earth must build weapons and components for the robots being used in this conflict. The legendary Captain Zheng Yi, who is currently in an abandoned town and recovering from an explosion, is the best soldier in the army. She immediately defends herself by firing precise shots and making inventive use of the weapon's included hook as robots pursue her. She can easily defeat the humanoid robots, but soon a new, more durable model with 4 legs will appear, making it more difficult for her to fight alone. The robot is set on fire by Zheng Yi after she picks out a few clever hiding spots and surprises it with a shot. But the robot has its own set of extinguishers and is soon ready to go again. When the robot approaches, Zheng Yi uses the hook to gather several metal beams and drop them on top of it, trapping it. She then ducks behind a car to get her last shot, but a tiny doll hanging from the rearview mirror causes her to lose focus. When the robot is distracted, Zheng Yi is pushed back, and the robot is able to shoot her first. However, when Zheng Yi examines her broken hand, she realizes she is an android and wasn't aware of it. A sudden alarm sounds and the town vanishes. In reality, this isn't Zheng Yi. She actually passed away in battle a few years ago. Currently, scientists are trying to develop the ideal soldier android that could be reproduced and deployed to battle using a copy of her brain. Since Zheng Yi consistently loses in the same place during the simulations that recreate her last battle, there hasn't been much progress. Xiuhyun, Zheng Yi's daughter, is in charge of the group despite having to repeatedly witness her mother's demise. Sang-hoon, the project's director, also decides to make a special presentation for the army's top brass in order to publicize their android, whom they are calling Zheng Yi. The soldiers are bored by Sang presentation, which also includes upscale dining and an overview of the background to the conflict. And they want him to skip over the information they already know. In order to create the most sophisticated combat command AI ever, they are mapping Zheng neural use cortex and turning it into data. Xiuhyun then shows how the simulations have been recording behavioral patterns. The soldiers observe that the android hasn't yet emerged from the simulation, but the whole point is that if Zheng Yi hadn't fallen in that battle, they would have already won the war. The government won't be willing to support this project until the team fixes Zheng Yi's error. Following the presentation, Xiuhyun and Sang-hoon have a private conversation. Xiuhyun is reminded by Sang-hoon that she has his complete backing and that the chairman has high expectations for her. Although he only began working for the chairman 10 years ago, he is aware that Xiuhyun was taken in when she was a young child who had just lost her mother. Therefore, having a good working relationship with her is important to Sang-hoon. After that, Xiuhyun collaborates with novice Jae Kyung to identify the issue with their most recent model. The last remnants of Zheng Yi are awakened, and because the brain still functions like a human, the fake Zheng Yi freaks out upon realizing she is a robot and starts to suffer in agony. In an instant, Xiuhyun disables the pain sensors, allowing Zheng Yi to erupt in rage and demand to know what they did to her. Xiuhyun gives the order to destroy this copy of the brain, because it appears that it can no longer be repaired due to its damage. As soon as they finish for the day, Jae Kyung uses the opportunity to talk about how happy he is to be working here, because he has always admired Zheng Yi and called her a hero. Xiuhyun explains that Zheng Yi never desired to be a hero and only enlisted in the military as a hired gun in order to help pay for CO Medical. Han's care after doctors discovered a tumor in her lungs when she was a young child. Every time her mother went into battle, she cried, and her mother passed away on the same day as her surgery. Jae Kyung points out that Soo-hyun could simply ask the android, since she shares the real Jung memories. Ye's when she wonders if her mother regrets making such a sacrifice and resents her for it. Soo-hyun says she'll think about it, but it seems like she's afraid to give it a shot. Soo-hyun sees a mother and child interacting on the local train as she rides off for the day. She is reminded of the last time she saw her own mother, when Jung-ya had visited Soo-hyun as she was preparing for surgery and wished her luck before departing for battle. As she had promised, Jung-yi would return to give Soo-hyun a bear hug and a lucky cheek rub. When the train arrives at its destination, Soo-hyun goes to take the annual ethics test, which is required of everyone to show they are not androids. The test consists of inquiries about emotions and morals. She then visits her doctor, who sadly informs her that the tumor has returned to her lungs and that she only has 3 months to live. This implies that the operation she underwent as a child and her mother's sacrifice were ineffective. The doctor advises that the best course of action would be to immediately copy her brain and transfer it to a prosthetic body, because laws currently in place protect those who do this. However, they only offer type A protection, which is very pricey, to those who do this. There is also type B, which is less expensive but gives up rights like marriage, mobility, and adoption. Additionally, the government demands compliance by demanding access to her brain data. Alternately, she could select type C, which doesn't treat people like humans at all and gives certified businesses ownership of the brain data. The person using this option will no longer be an individual because thousands of clones will be produced, but at least the prosthetic is free. To obtain the funds for her daughter's surgery, Jung-ya had selected type C. Soo-hyun says she'll think about it and departs, leaving the doctor, who is also an android, to recharge. Soo-hyun departs the structure. She recalls the occasion when company executives asked her grandmother to sign a document allowing them to use Jung Brain Ye's and androids in exchange for paying for Seo upbringing. Hyun's along with the promise that her mother would always be a hero, they gave Soo-hyun an action figure of Jung-ye. But Soo-hyun is still not sure if that was the right move. Soo-hyun visits her mother's unconscious body, which is kept in a separate room to prevent the brain from rotting, as she finishes her day. The following day, Seo Team Hyun's recreates the brain and prepares to test it on a fresh simulation. Sang-hoon instructs the team to shoot the android in the leg before they begin because he wants to try something new in an effort to get a different outcome. Soo-hyun finds it painful to witness her mother suffering when Jung-ye wakes up in the simulation with severe leg pain from the wound. Jung-ye tries to fight through the discomfort, but she is quickly outmatched and her desire to fight begins to wane. Jung-ye manages to defeat the robot with just her fists before she is shot by a different foe, just as the enemy is about to kill her due to a new area in her brain lighting up. Sang-hoon is thrilled by this discovery and is prepared to brag about it to the superiors, even though it is unfortunate that they have already lost this new brain. The following day, the entire team departs from the labs and makes their way to the corporate offices, but the chairman isn't there. Instead, they are greeted by the new director of the product development department, who is constantly laughing and making fun of Sang-hoon. Sang-hoon is perplexed by the need for a product development department because the company has never had one because it only manufactures weapons, and he frets about the possibility that weapons development will be scaled back. However, his worries go unheard and the team is sent away without receiving any clarification. Sang-hoon continues to berate the new worker while returning to the labs and makes a vow to uphold the chairman's vision. A few days later, the team learns the chairman has come to see them as they are considering the new components they could use for their upcoming android test. In order to ensure Soo-hyun is mentally healthy while working with her own mother as an experiment, Sang-hoon queries whether she has been taking her ethics test on the way to the meeting. Sang-hoon freezes as soon as the two walk into the office, revealing that the chairman actually created him as an android by copying his own brain, but Sang-hoon is completely unaware of this. The Allied forces and the Adrian Republic are signing a treaty, which means that the war is over and that no longer will weapons be required, according to the chairman, who has arrived with this crucial news. However, he doesn't think the research they did on Jung-yi was useless because it taught them a lot about creating effective AIs, and they can now use it to create androids that will perform housekeeping and provide other services. The chairman admits that his initial goal was to achieve immortality by transferring his real brain into Sang-hoon, but he ultimately chose to copy it instead because he dared not live inside a machine that would always feel artificial. Soo-hyun wants to carry on with her mother's project regardless of how fake it may be, but the chairman refuses. The team returns to work a few hours later, since they must finish the project before changing their objectives. Because they are unable to isolate the new brain area that Jung-yi keeps dying in, Sang-hoon becomes enraged and decides that it is time for some extreme theories. Soo-hyun is forced to watch her suffer as the pain center in her brain intensifies after Sang-hoon orders the team to activate the android and cut her arm. Sang-hoon, who is in a desperate state, tries to shoot the android's legs nearby to match the wound from the previous day, but the new brain area still won't light up. When Soo-hyun finally snaps and disables the system to relieve Jung's suffering, Yi's Sang-hoon becomes furious and threatens her with his gun. Soo-hyun is unfazed and refuses to budge. However, before Sang-hoon can go too far, another employee arrives and tells him that the chairman wants to see him. Soo-hyun thanks her team for all of their hard work as Sang-hoon walks away silently. She instructs them to compile all the data they have gathered and send it to her, even though it is time to end the project. Later on, Soo-hyun concentrates on looking at the data while ignoring the pain in her lungs. She was shocked to discover that her mother's brain had been exported one final time without her knowledge. Soo-hyun leaves to look into things and enters Jae-room Kyung's after hearing some strange noises as she passes by. She discovers some pretty disturbing things there. Jae-kyung had been acting flirtatious with a brand new android created to commit sins while still sporting Jung face. Yi's furious Soo-hyun pushes Jae-kyung against the shelves and calls him a pervert after the android has been covered with a blanket. However, Jae-kyung explains that he was simply carrying out orders. It turns out that making household AAs also entails making intimate companions, and because Jung-yi was so well liked, people were willing to spend a lot of money to have her as their girlfriend. Considering that Jung-yi is a Type C persona, anyone can use her. Soo-hyun is devastated by the news and sobs as she leaves the room, realizing how she should have anticipated this when they gave her an action figure of her own deceased mother. Soo-hyun returns to the lab a short while later to spend time with the android before the project is abandoned. Sang-hoon is already there, depressed because he believes he betrayed the chairman's confidence, and that is why their project was scrapped. She is awakened after Soo-hyun turns off the pain sensors and walks past him into the android chamber. Once she has Jung attention, Yi Soo-hyun informs her that they have saved her from the enemy and that she is seriously injured. As a result, she will assist her in dying quietly. The brain region they were looking for finally lights up again as Jung-yi inquires as to whether her daughter survived the operation, just as Soo-hyun is about to turn her off. Soo-hyun tells Jung-yi the surgery was successful, so she can move on in peace as she starts to cry, as she realizes both times this brain area reacted because Jung-yi believed she would die without learning about her daughter. After hearing this, Jung-yi is relieved and admits that she had been feeling guilty because, during the battle, she misplaced the tiny doll that her daughter had given her as a good luck charm before she underwent surgery. She consistently loses at the same location because the small doll in the car and her guilt serve as a distraction. Soo-hyun turns her off when she can no longer take it and breaks down in a fit of self-loathing. She realizes there's one more thing she can do after getting that off her chest. Soo-hyun asks to run one final simulation before ending things the following day. When the other team members have left, Soo-hyun deletes the unidentified portion of Jung-brain Ye's after she tells them she will set up everything by herself. Then she starts to whisper in her ear, warning her of all the bad things that will happen to her if they don't take action after the previous simulation is over. When the final simulation begins, Jung-yi follows the customary battle procedures and perishes in the same place. Sang-hoon is unconcerned by Ja-Strange Kyung's readings, which show that the brain's response was weaker because the project is already finished. Sang-hoon starts to head to his room as the other workers remove the android when he suddenly remembers that he also noticed something odd. Rushing back to the lab, he requests a slow-motion replay of the simulation so he can be certain Jung-yi wasn't actually shot. She didn't actually fall in the usual place, she just pretended to. Sang-hoon immediately sounds the alarm, and Jung-yi responds by punching the staff members who were removing her. Soo-hyun rushes back into the lab and erases all of the original project data as everyone gets ready for emergency measures. When Jung-yi looks for a way out, she finds a room full of numerous robots that resemble her. Before she can accept this, Sang Army Hoons of security robots locates her, starting a bloody struggle. But Jung-yi easily defeats them all. She is a legendary fighter for a reason. She seizes the opportunity to use a maintenance machine against a robot that is pushing her against it. She is suddenly kicked from behind by one of the robots who then pushes her against the wall to kill her by taking advantage of her blind spot. Finally arriving at that precise moment, Soo-hyun disables the robot just in time. She then assures Jung-yi that they are in this together, and because it is the voice from her dreams, Jung-yi believes her. A few minutes later, a fresh group of security robots enters the hangar. Before shooting at Jung-yi, they let one of the androids take Soo-hyun away. When they check on the body, though, they find that Jung-body Yi's is empty. Checking the surveillance footage reveals Soo-hyun left the body with her mother's face behind to full security and transferred the brain copy from the regular body to a security android to escape undetected. Sang-hoon is waiting for them in the train, which Soo-hyun drags Jung-yi into after learning it isn't as empty as she had assumed. As the train departs, Sang-hoon tells Jung-yi to keep her distance from her daughter and accuses Soo-hyun of being ungrateful for everything the chairman has done for her. Jung-yi is shocked to learn that this is her young daughter, but Soo-hyun interrupts and explains that she has erased all information about herself from her memory in order to start over without making any additional sacrifices. Sang-hoon shoots Soo-hyun in the shoulder as retaliation for destroying the project, which causes Jung-yi to attack him and shoot him with his own gun. Sang-hoon leaps to his feet eager to continue the fight, but he stops in his tracks when he notices his reflection in the window. The shot's damage has exposed him to be an android. He is referred to by Soo-hyun as the chairman's little toy, which drives Sang-hoon insane. Sang-hoon now has the ability to use the features of his android body, and he attacks Jung-yi, starting a fight that scatters their bodies throughout the carriage and causes the train to tremble. Sang-hoon finally succeeds in pushing Jung-yi through the window after exchanging blows with her. But she purposefully releases the pressure so that she can crawl around the train and re-enter it through a different window. More security robots ride in on a parallel train at that precise moment, and they join the two wagons. They follow Jung-yi by jumping through the windows, but Jung-yi easily dispatches of all of them with pinpoint strikes. When Soo-hyun notices her mother in trouble, she tries to stop the robot from attacking her. Sang-hoon takes advantage of this distraction to catch her with a hook. Soo-hyun is simply pushed away by the robot, but seeing her daughter in danger motivates Jung-yi to act more violently. Sang-hoon is expelled from the train after she destroys all the remaining robots, but he gets back in by clinging to the hook. The train arrives in the city as Sang-hoon and Jung-ye resume fighting, and the shaking of two attached wagons becomes too much for the tracks to handle. In order to help her mother safely return to the first wagon, Soo-hyun manages to get her hands on one of the weapons the robots dropped and fires a hook for Jung-ye to grab. They then let the second wagon fall with Sang-hoon inside of it. When the train reaches the mountain region, it finally breaks down. Soo-hyun explains that she doesn't have much time left and that Jung-ye should tend to seal Bullet Hyun's wound since they can hear the police coming. She wants Jung-ye to flee and begin a new life where she can at long last focus on herself rather than her daughter. After some hesitation, Jung-ye agrees to this plan, but not before giving Soo-hyun a final hug and giving her a lucky cheek rub like she used to as a child as a way of saying goodbye. Soo-hyun wishes Jung-ye luck as she exits the train, and even though she passes away alone, she feels like she has found closure. In order to enjoy her newfound freedom, Jung-ye runs through the mountains, avoiding any humans who might want to use her once more.